Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in AP English, and we turn in our study of Dante's Inferno now to Canto 28. We are in Circle 8, Bolgia 9. These are the ones who cause schisms, sometimes referred to as the schismatics, the sowers of religious, political, family discord. Now, sometimes students will say, seriously, it's like Dante is inventing now certain kinds of sins so that he can have more to write about. And I suppose to some degree there's some truth to this, no question. Some of these sins certainly can fold into other sins, and of course a lot of these are just simply variations on a theme. And the theme, of course, is why we call it simple fraud. That is to say, you know, there's always, it seems like, some kind of a disjuncture and some kind of lying or some kind of cheating or some kind of thievery or something like that, which always seems to kind of encircle a lot of this. Now, no question though, Dante is going to give us some of the most vivid and grotesque of all of his Inferno in this one. So, you know, I'm gonna kind of set you up already to this one. And we're going to find Dante as well in this one going after the Muslims the way in some ways he went after the Jews when we had Caiaphas crucified, and along with Caiaphas his in-law Annas as well, crucified on the ground, and in some ways kind of suggesting that it's the Jews who are at fault for the killing of Jesus Christ and all that. Of course, this is still today a huge debate. Who do you blame for the death of Christ? Is it the Jews? Is it the Romans? Is it some combination of the two? We're going to see Muhammad placed in hell. That's one thing. But we're going to see Muhammad in the most vicious of ways gutted. We've got no attempts here at religious tolerance happening with Dante. Now, this, of course, for us, as we said about earlier parts of the Inferno, no question, we read a whole lot of Inferno much differently today in our postmodern world than we will when it's Dante in 1300. But having said that, we still want to show respect to all sides of any debate, no question. And so we will pursue our study now of Canto 28. Now, if you haven't been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, very much recommend you do that. The AP folder down the left-hand side there. I've already given lectures in the AP folder, you'll see them there, of everything from Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, as well as Virgil's Aeneid, all the way up to and including our study of St. Augustine's Confessions. We've also given detailed lectures on each of the cantos 1 through 27. We are now nearing the end of our study of Inferno, and yet it, I think, makes sense for us to be reminded once more just where we've come from. So let's do some quick summary. In Canto 1, we have Dante the Pilgrim lost in the Wood of Error, 7th of April, 1300, Thursday before Good Friday. He's 35 years old. He meets his leopard, his lion, his wolf, and Virgil has to save him. Canto 2, we have the Invocation of the Muse. Beatrice, we're told, will have sent Virgil. Dante is ready for his journey. Or we might say it this way, Dante thinks he's ready for his journey, right? In Canto 3, the inscription of hell, abandon hope, all you who enter here, the uncommitted. In Canto 4, Limbo, Circle 1, the unbaptized pagans, where Homer, Virgil, and Aristotle will find themselves. Cantos 5, 6, and 7 are the incontinent, those who are too weak in their will to be able to sustain proper moral behavior. In Circle 2 of Canto 5, the jacked lovers of Dido, Francesca, Paolo. In Canto 6, we have Circle 3, the gluttons with Chaco, and the prophecy of Florence, as well the final judgment. In Canto 7, we have Circle 4, the prodigals and the avaricious, pushing rocks around. And Circle 5, also the Styx with the wrathful and the sullen. And again, language is a problem. They can't speak very well. In Canto 8, we have Philebus who will take them across the Styx. Felipe Argente is there, and to the city of Dis, the city of hell, but they can't get in. In Canto 9, they do get in because an angel arrives and opens the gates. In Canto 10, Dante's famous conversation with Farinata and Cavalcante. In Canto 11, we have Virgil's giving the map of the rest of hell, built kind of around his understanding of Aristotle. Starting in Canto 12, we have the second major division of hell. If the first is the incontinent, the second is the violent. And in Canto 12, we begin with Circle 7, Round 1. And here we have the violent against neighbors, and Philasium, the river of blood. In Canto 13, Round 2 of Circle 7, violent against self. These are the suicides and the talking trees, you'll remember. In Canto 14, we have Circle 7, Ring 3, the violent against God. These are the blasphemers. And Capanius is there. right? Of course, showing very Promethean-like that he does not care. In Canto 15, we have Circle 7, Ring 3, the violent against nature. These are the sodomites, the homosexuals with Brunito Latini as being visited there as an important advisor and mentor for Dante. And then to continue in Canto 16, Circle 7, Ring 3, we have the other 3 sodomites from Florence. We pointed out again that Dante and the church will see all sexual acts that do not immediately lead to creation of life as somehow unnatural, and therefore that is an act. And again, Dante is going to place them in hell, which makes him obviously, according to our terms, intolerant. And yet it's fascinating, we said it ironic, that these sinners get a pretty fair treatment by Dante, both the pilgrim and the poet. In Canto 17, we have Circle 7, Ring 3, the violent against art. These are the users. You'll maybe remember that one of them will stick out his tongue to Dante as insult, and then they write Gerion's back down into Circle 8 of Canto 18. Circle 8 then will begin the Malabauge, that is to say that area of simple fraud. And again, we'll have 10 pouches or subsets within Circle 8. We're obviously in 9 here. Okay, so let's go through them quickly. In Canto 18, we've got Bolgia 1, the panders and the seducers, and Bolgia 2, the flatterers who will swallow human excrement, poo, yuck. In Canto 19, Circle 8, Bolgia number 3, we got the Simoniacs, Pope Nicholas III, and this is Dante the Reformer at his best. In Canto 20, we have Bolgia number 4, the fortune tellers. Here we have Tiresias with his head on backwards, crying, and the tears flow down the back and through the clefts of the buttocks. It's a compelling image. Canto 21-22 we treated together. This is Bolgia 5, these are the berators, and we've got the farting demons and that whole storyline, right? Canto 23, we have Bolgia number 6. These are the hypocrites, and they have those heavy robes, you'll maybe remember. And Caiaphas, as we were mentioning, again, Dante's going after, to some degree, going after the Jews and the beginnings of some anti-Semitic kinds of instantiations. Not the beginnings entirely, but certainly the continuation of that anti-Semitic thing going on here with Caiaphas in Bolgia number 6. Bolgia 24-25 we did together. And again, we pointed out that this is the Bolgia number 7 of the thieves. This is the up on your feet passage, and this is those men turning to snakes and snakes turning to men. We said that Dante is really into his powerful form by this point. Then we went to Cantos 26-27. This is Bolgia number 8. These are the false counselors in here. We have our final discussion with Ulysses and how he found his way. And then the famous Guido, who of course had everything to do with Boniface VIII and the terrible things that he did. Again, Dante always having his comments about Boniface. Now we turn to Canto 28. And again, the hope is that you're reading this material on your own and then using me to help you. I think that we need, as we've already said, to treat very, very lightly in this Canto 28, especially because of the language about Muhammad, the great prophet of Islam. And we have to show, I think, respect as we make our observations. Again, our learning theory here is the desire to connect new information to old information in meaningful ways. Our 3 levels of annotative theory here answer 3 guiding questions. Level 1, what does the text say? Level 2, what does the text mean? 2a, themes, messages. 2b, we're working with symbolism and irony, as well as asking about Dante as poet, politician, and philosopher. We'll see a lot of that in this one. And then finally at level 3, how can I relate to this information in meaningful ways? At 3a, again, from the Iliad up and including Augustine's Confessions, and obviously earlier parts of our poem here as well. And then finally, how can I relate to this information personally? Let's do a quick brief summary of Canto 28. We got this vicious kind of description of a gutted Muhammad. We'll talk about why it might be the case that we are in the area of, again, the schismatics, and why in heaven's name would Muhammad be considered the starter of a schism? And the answer will maybe shock you. Dante and his contemporaries believed that, in fact, Muhammad was first a Christian, in fact, a Christian cardinal, and then he became a heretic and an unbeliever, and therefore led to this schism. It's one way to try to explain why Dante has the vicious kind of rendering of Muhammad that he's God. We then will have Dante, after a few other kinds of conversations, but Dante's nasty words to Morca, and this is going to be an important part of our study, because this will explain why Dante has such a disgust for the Guelph-Ghibelline split. right? And then finally, we have the headless Bertrand de Born. He carries his own head like a lantern, and the head speaks. It's one of the more compelling moments. And obviously, if you're going to do some drawings, then this is going to be one of those amazing drawings, right? All right, let's turn now to the canto, and we'll do our best to, again, show some respect both to Dante's position as well as to our positions of religious tolerance as we get into this. Who could find words? Already Dante's setting us up. This is going to be some of the most grotesque stuff we've read. Who could find words, even in free-running prose, for the blood and wounds I saw in all their horror? Telling it over as often as you choose, it's certain no human tongue could take the measure of those enormities. So Dante knows he's about to wade into some pretty grotesque and horrific stuff, and he lets us know right away. Our speech and mind, straining to comprehend them, flail and falter. If all the Apulians, all that area of southern Italy, could long ago mourn their lives cut off by Trojans, we know about this from our study of the Aeneid, right? Could live once more, assemble to grieve again with all those stained by their own blood in the Lone Carthaginian War. We're thinking here, of course, of Hannibal, and we're told that one of the things Hannibal did was he cut off the fingers of Roman soldiers to get their rings to bring back as trophies. By their own blood in the Lone Carthaginian War, rings pillaged from their corpses, poured by the bushel, as Livy writes, who never was known to err, the great historian Livy. And they, who took their mortal blows in battle with Robert Guiscard, and those whose bones were heaped at Capranero, killed in the Pugilan betrayal. We're talking here now about Guiscard from 1015 to 1085. He's this Norman warrior. And then we're talking as well about the allowing of Charles' troops through ultimately a strategy that allows Charles to win. This is all that we're talking about. In other words, they're betrayers, and this is what is being constituted here as well. And the soldiers massacred in the stratagem shaped by the old Araldo, who conquered upon a weapon near Tagliazzoni when their army was trapped. And some were showing wounds still hot and open, others the gashes where severed limbs had been. It would be nothing. Now, all of that to say, all of that description of mass mayhem in war, it would be nothing to equal the mutilation I saw in the ninth chasm. So let's write it in our notes. The ninth chasm, the ninth pouch, the ninth bolsia is going to, in fact, have some of the most vicious renderings of what the human body can do. Now, this is often asked of me by students. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. Somebody died, like Muhammad. They put his body in the ground, right, buried or whatever. And now all of a sudden in the afterlife, you still got a body? Sometimes it's called a shade, sometimes it's called a body. Clearly it can have some kind of sense of pain in it, or all these torments would mean anything, right? This is not just psychological torment, this is physical torment as well. Well, you know, Dante's walking an interesting line here, where you have souls and you have shades, but these are not actual bodies. Remember, they don't reunite until after the final judgment, according to Catholic Christian theology. And yet here we go. Now, in the ninth chasm, we're going to have some really disturbing imagery. And it begins with a gutted Muhammad. Okay, so Dante going after first the Jews, now the Muslims, as being the reason for a lot of schism that would occur. No barrel staved in and missing its end piece ever gaped as wide as the man I saw split open from his chin down to the farting place. Again, this is going to be grotesque language, I apologize in advance. Down to the farting place, and from the splayed trunk, the spilled entrails dangled between his thighs. I saw his organs, and the sack that makes the bread we swallow turn to shit. Seeing my eyes fastened upon him, he pulled open his chest with both hands, saying, "Look how Muhammad claws and mangles himself, torn open down the breast. Look how I tear myself." And Ali goes weeping before me, the relation of Muhammad, like me, a schismatic, and cleft, split open from the chin along his face up to the forelock. All you see here, when alive, taught scandal and schism, so they are cleaved like this. A devil waits with a sword back there to carve each of us open afresh, each time we've gone our circuit round this road, where while we grieve, our wounds close up before we pass him again. And who are you that stand here, perhaps to delay torments pronounced on your own false words to men? Those are the words that the prophet Muhammad speaks. Now, Dante's got no interest in showing any respect to the prophet Muhammad because he doesn't see him as a prophet. He sees him as a disposed, ruined, corrupted Christian, we might say, right? Well, having said that, let's at least use this passage to explain why it is the case that from the Middle Ages on, we have this growing tension between the three great monotheisms on the planet: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. No question, somebody like Winston Churchill and some of his most vicious comments against Muslims is going to in many ways originate from a set of lines like this. In other words, we have this notion that because Muhammad started this great schism within Christianity that became ultimately another religion in Islam, although Dante will not see it as another religion, then there's reason to put him in hell, gutted in this horrific way. Again, we today look at this and we have to say, well, this maybe explains a whole lot of the intolerance between the two monotheisms that, hello, we still see happening on this planet today. By the way, the schisms continue as he speaks as well about Ali, and of course the fact that we have Sunni and Shia schisms that will occur, right? He asks again, Dante, who are you? Neither has death yet reached him, Virgil will say, nor does he stay for punishment of guilt, my master replied, but for experience. And for that purpose I, who am dead, lead him through hell as rightful guide from circle to circle. Of this you can be sure, as that I speak to you here at his side. In other words, don't worry, he's supposed to be here. More than 100 shades, Dante the poet will tell us now, were gathered there, who hearing my master's words had halted and came along the trench toward me in order to stare, forgetting their torment, in wonder for a time. Then we're told the last words of Muhammad, tell Fra Dolcino, this is part of the Apostolic Brotherhood from 1307, and he was burned at the stake. Tell Fra Dolcino, and 1307, right? Remember when 1300? You who may see the sun, if he wants not to follow soon to the same punishment, he had better store up grain against the winter siege, and the snow's duress of the Northries will easily bring him down. After he had lifted his foot to resume the pace, Muhammad spoke these words, and having spoken, he stepped away again on his painful course. So there goes Muhammad. Another there, whose face was cruelly broken, the throat pierced through, the nose cut off at the brow, one ear remaining, stopped and gazed at me, stricken with recognition as well as wonder. Ah, you, his bleeding throat spoke, you here, yet not eternally doomed by guilt unless I'm deceived. I knew your face when I still walked above in Italy. If you return to the sweet plain I know well, that slopes towards Marcarvo and Versailles, remember Pier di Marassini, and tell Sir Guido and Angelino, the two best men of Fano, if we have foresight here in hell, then by a tyrant's treachery they will drown off Lacosili, bound and thrown in the sea from their ships. Now, we think around 1271, scholars say, these two were killed by being tossed overboard by Malatensio in 1215. And so you've got kind of this, again, schism, this breaking asunder of what should be people who are together. Neptune's never seen between Cyprus and Majuria all over the Mediterranean, whether committed by pirates or Argives, such a crime. The betrayer, and again, Maltasinio, who sees from one eye only, he holds a city found better by another who's with me here, Caius Curo, we'll get to him in a second, will lure them to sail for truce talks. Then, when he has dealt with them, they'll need no prayer for safe winds near Forcia, because they're going to get thrown overboard. Nor, not ever again, because they're going to die. Then I said to him, if you'd have me be the bearer of news from you to those above, explain, what man do you mean who found a city bitter? Now we're talking here about Caius Curo, who bribed Julius Caesar to betray Pompey and as well convinced him to cross the Rubicon and all of that. Then he grasped one shade near him by the jaw and opened the mouth and said, this is really kind of grotesque stuff, isn't it? This is the creature who does not speak, who once in exile knew words to persuade Caesar at the Rubicon, affirming to help him thrust his doubt below, delaying when he's ready, hurts a man. In other words, it's time to go, let's go. He convinced Caesar to do the unthinkable and, of course, start the great civil war, which ultimately so many people died from. It's always, of course, been pointed out that for Virgil, as well as for Dante, you can say that Caesar was a bad guy because he did this, but of course, his doing this allowed for ultimately Caesar Augustus to come to power. We will say the same thing about Brutus, of course, and Cassius killing Julius Caesar, right? I mean, it allowed for Caesar Augustus, who Virgil obviously is very, very happy with, and Dante will say the great leader as well, right? I saw how helpless Curio's tongue was cut to a stub in his throat, whose speech had been so keen. Again, some nasty word pictures here. One with both hands, now we're going to get another one. One with both hands lopped off came forward to shout, stumps raised in the murk, to spatter his cheeks with blood. Also, remember Mosca. I too gave out a slogan urging bloodshed when I said, once done, it's done with. Words which were seeds of pain for the Tuscan people. Then, when he heard me add, and death to your family line, utterly undone by sorrow, heaped upon his sorrow, the soul went away like one whom grief has made insane. Now, this is Dante the politician. He blames Mosca for the eventual exile that he has to endure, because Mosca is the one who's involved with the creating of much of the tension between Guelphs and Ghibellines. And guess what? It has to do with a girl, has to do with somebody betrothed to get married to a girl from the Guelph, and then the Ghibellines get involved, and it explains why so much of the Guelph-Ghibelline strife has been standing all the time behind so much of what Dante the poet is doing. By the way, Dante, you'll maybe remember, asked Chaco about Mosca in Canto 5, lines 70 through 75, all right? Dante's words, by the way, what's done is done with, and seeds of pain for the Tuscan people and death to your family line. All of that is Dante's way of saying to Mosca, I still hold it against you. And we're told that Mosca just went away like one whom grief had made insane. I stayed to see more. One side